Welcome to my first edition of Raiders of the Lost Cars. So in this little episode here, we're going to be talking about a very, very unique car. When you're looking for cars, like I do, all over the world, especially in the United States, to find something that's totally unique is really special, which is what a friend of mine, Pete, has done, Pete Wood. He spent 30 years looking for a Cadillac, a Model 30 Cadillac. Now, what you see here is a 1909 Model 30 Cadillac. But what Pete was looking for was a 1912 Model 30 Cadillac, and not just any 1912 Model 30 Cadillac. This was one of three cars that were built by Cadillac UK, and they were miniature versions. What you see behind me here on the packing crate, which we've just unpacked, is a 1912 miniature version of the Model 30. Now, this was built by Cadillac UK to demonstrate how good their starter motor was, and for Cadillac cars. Now, Cadillac were the first people to put starter motors into cars, into production. And what they wanted to do to show how good this was, they built a baby version of the Model 30 and powered it with the starter motor. Now, this car went to the Paris show in 1912, and who should go to that Paris show as well? Queen Alexandra, King George V's wife. She saw this little car and thought, that will do my little nephew, Olav of Norway. That will suit him right down to the ground. So she wanted to buy this car and approached Cadillac and said to them, I want to buy this. How much is it going to cost me? Well, with a bit of humming and hawing, because the car wasn't for sale, so they decided to come up with a price. They came up with something not much different to the price of a brand new Model 30 Cadillac. So something like 80 to 100 pounds less. Now, the Model 30 Cadillac was in the region of 300 and something pounds, 330, 340 pounds. And I believe that Model 30 was sold for something like 230, 240 pounds. So that was a huge amount of money to think that you would be paying that sort of money for a toy car. Subsequently, the car went to the royal family, came back to England and spent time with the royal family there. In fact, the real unique thing about this car as well for Pete in particular is the fact that his great-great-uncle was in fact the designer of the car. And so to actually find this vehicle and bring it back into the country is a big thing for himself and his family. And in one of the photographs, actually, you can see the car driving into the gates of Kensington Palace. That is actually Pete's great-great-uncle delivering it to Queen Alexandra. So I'm going to introduce you to my friend Pete Wood, and who's going to tell us more about it.
Nice to see you
Pete,
again, Toby.
Nice to see you again, mate. Thanks for coming along.
Welcome.
And thanks for bringing your Model 30 1909 down, and thank you for bringing the baby Cadillac. Well, actually, I have to admit that I picked the baby Cadillac up for you.
You did?
Yeah, I spoke to Pete last week or the week before, and I knew that he had found this car that he had spent 30 years looking for. And we had some conversations last year while I was in America, because I had some cars coming back and it was going to try and slip into one of my containers with a fire truck and some engines and a World War I aeroplane engine that I've bought. And actually, that's taken a lot longer to get back than I thought it was going to, and so I'm still waiting, but his Model 30's managed to make it back via another container, but it went to Yorkshire. Now, last weekend, I went to Scotland to pick up a 1928 Ford Model A pickup, and I phoned Pete and said, look, are you sure this car's going to make it down? And he said, well, let me just check that this guy's going to deliver it, and subsequently, he wasn't, so I did a diversion via York to pick his baby Cadillac, and then I went to Scotland to pick up my Model A Ford, and then came back via the Lake District. So now it's here in my little museum at home, and we're going to talk something about it because it is incredibly rare. They built three of these cars. This is the first one. It was a little bit too small for the Prince of Norway, so subsequently they built a bigger version for him, but Pete will run us through that. Tell me in brief how that came about, this 30-year search for this car. You know, it went back to America. I gather it went back to in Henry Leyland's ownership, who was the founder of Cadillac. Tell me what happened then.
Well, the reason I'm passionate about it, I love Cadillacs, same as you, but I was determined to find the Holy Grail, the missing Cadillac.
It is a Holy Grail.
And I wrote about it regularly, every month in different car magazines when the internet started, Facebook and everything else, I was writing about it every month. And I was convinced that it was still out there. I just knew that the history was so good about the car, it had to survive.
Yeah.
And okay, it took me longer than I ever thought, but yeah, I found it.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad, that it's back where it started, where it was made.
Yeah.
In London, and we're here today with it.
Yeah, because there's footage of this car driving around London, isn't
Yep.
there, when it was new, followed by a version
Yep,
of this. In fact,
absolutely.
very much similar to this, because it was a touring body on that car that was following it around as well.
It was.
Yeah. There's plenty of history with this car. There's plenty of history documented. There's loads of photographs with the royal family,
Yep.
which you'll see, and also video footage or film footage from period of it driving around London doing its promotional work. So after Henry Leland had the car, it then went into private ownership.
No, it actually got bought. So the car was 10 years old in 1923, and Keith Albee, who was the biggest vaudeville producer in America, owned pretty much every theatre in the USA. He decided that he was looking for a small car that circus people, little people, could drive. And he constructed a scaled down town for children to sort of walk around. And obviously the children were the same size as the little people that were the employees there. And so this car was put into use, ferrying the very affluent children of very affluent parents around Toyland, as it was called. And it was there for 5 years until Keith Albee sold out to RKO, the cinema people.
Yeah, I know.
And then that's when it went into private hands.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable that just one family owned this car from 1928 until I found it 15 months ago.
So it was with the same family. It had gone through
Same
subsequent
family.
generations.
We know at least 3 generations of kids learnt to drive in this, which is why it got a little bit battered compared to how it was when it was, in the hands of the royal family.
Yeah.
But I think you were saying it's in pretty good shape
I mean,
still.
it's in remarkable condition when you think about cars. I mean, say this particular little red one here that I've got, my little J40, suffered terribly. It was like a pepper pot when I bought it. It was, you could literally, if you filled it with water, filled it with water, it would have run out like a colander. Yeah. And so that suffered, even though that's a 1956 model of pedal car, that being 10, 12, 13 years old, is in remarkable condition, remarkable solid condition, which is testament to the engineering and build quality that went into it. And you can see it's a factory built car. It was built by the Cadillac Motor Company. It wasn't built by someone in their shed. And so the actual quality and the money and effort that went into it would have been phenomenal, to be honest with you. And I think you said to me that it took 4 guys 6 weeks.
Yep.
4 guys 6 weeks from Cadillac to build it. The body went out to a coach building company to be made.
It's exactly 2/5 the size of the actual real car.
Of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so the actual workmanship, even with the castings and what have you, and then the forgings on the front axle. This is basically just a scaled down version of the proper axle on the front of the Model 30, which people watching might not appreciate, or some of you will appreciate, but some of you won't appreciate, is the amount of work that would have to go into making something like that bespoke, just a one-off. It's huge. It's not a small feat. It's enormous. Even the headlights have been specially made just for this car by what headlight company made those?
Dietz.
Dietz. Okay, yeah. So they're a well-known headlight company of the time, and they've made literally scale versions of their headlights, and so that even for the company to do that would be huge. It's because everything they're making on mass production back then would all be made with presses, patterns. So then to have to then make something just a one-off, just to fit a car, just for the hell of it, is quite a big ask. Even the hubcaps on this thing have got Cadillac stamped into them. The wheels are handmade wooden artillery wheels. It's got leaf springs. It's got 3 leaf springs at the rear, one being a transverse spring that goes right across. The back axle it hasn't got a differential in it, but it looks like it has a differential in it. It's a proper piece of manufacturing. And so when you take the body off this car, the chassis itself is literally just a scaled down version of the 1909 chassis. On the top, we have a roadster body, which is a 2-door with a dicky seat at the rear. Even the likes of the doors, the embossing on the leather panels that went on the doors, they've all been embossed, and the amount of work that's gone into that, the stitching, the craftsmanship is just amazing. Even the brake bands, these cars have 2-wheel brakes. Early cars only have 2-wheel brakes, just rear wheels. These are exactly the same, which I can say categorically because I've got the 1912 EMF, which has exactly the same brake bands on. These are just miniature versions of those, proper brake bands with the eyelets at the ends, and they're lined with brake lining. Absolutely fantastic, to be honest with you. And just all sorts of things, even the light switches, amazing, beautiful little miniature versions of the light switches that all work absolutely, perfectly, even now, this much time after. Just the quality is just outstanding. Outstanding. What's the future for this car at the moment?
It's about to now go for a very gentle restoration. We'd like to get it back to the original colour.
And we know what that original colour is, don't we? We still
do.
have it on the inside here where the seats have come out. It was a lovely dove grey.
Yep.
And the chassis is a beautiful maroon.
There are some parts that are missing that are going to have to be remade. So over the years, it's lost its windscreen frame and the glass. It's lost the radiator cap.
The hood, I take it.
Some of the hood, there was a hood on there. So, for example, we've got some parts. So, for example, when the hood went up, this strap would fasten the hood to the front of the car. So we've got some parts that are there, some that aren't, some that are going to need repairs or restoring. The wooden steering wheel is going to have to be remade. But considering that it was stripped down in the 1960s by the then owner, it's now moved, I believe, 4 times to different parts of the country. And
in the USA?
In the USA.
Yeah.
So each time it's moved, it's 1 or 2 parts have gone missing. But considering that, it was completely stripped down and has been moved so many times, I'm amazed at how much is still here.
So am I. I mean, because let's face it, you've even got a bag of horsehair to stuff the seats, which is original horsehair, which is I don't know how old that is.
Well, it's definitely,
but it's some of the original packing for the for the seats there.
We'll definitely nothing gets thrown away. We always keep it, so we'll know how much quantity we're going to need, even if we replace it.
Yeah. Now, I take it also, you notice on the original photographs, the car had pneumatic tyres. This is now fitted with solid tyres. Pneumatic tyres obviously perished years ago. You've managed to source some sort of pneumatic tyre that's going to fit that?
I believe so. I've managed to find some very small BMX tyres, which are knobblies, but I will cut the knobbles off and make them smooth tyres again. But it's these wheels were specially made by Dunlop, and they're 15-inch wheels, which you cannot get 15-inch tyres.
No, and that's one of the problems when you've got something that's been made bespoke by a company, especially a company like Dunlop. They're not going to entertain making them again now. And if they did, it would cost fortunes.
Yeah, I think it just shows that at the time they were so paranoid about wanting to make it a proper scale, they didn't care that, you know, they weren't going to be able to. They made tyres for it as well. So
Yeah.
the one issue that Queen Alexandra had, her main request was, she asked what the speed was of this, and it's 15 miles an hour. So it's powered
which is
by
quite fast.
It's quite fast.
Yeah.
So she was concerned.
Well, considering the full-size version only does 25, 25 you know, in 1903.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, it's
So she asked if it could be slowed down, and they geared it down so that it did 6 miles an hour at the time. And so quite a bit of the video footage shows that, you know, the car was, you know, very much geared down at the time.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a 3-seater. 2 people, 2 children can sit in the front. It's also got a mother-in-law seat.
My mother-in-law wouldn't fit that, and I know that.
So the
try.
seat, the seat pops up, and you can actually then put a third child, small one, in the back.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to obviously
Yeah.
need to be replaced. Well, the idea was that this was going to be showed at every single motor car show in 1913. So the Paris Motor Show of 1912 was the biggest in Europe at the time.
And this was the first show that you went
This
to?
was the first show that it went to there in Paris.
Yeah.
Obviously, then Queen Alexandra bought it, and so, you know, the publicity they got from selling it to the royal family seemed to be enough
Well, it would
the
have been.
time.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have been. In fact, I'm surprised they charged them as much money as they did. I mean, that would have been a huge publicity stunt for them back then. Are there any photographs with the Queen with the car?
There are, and I've seen them. I don't have permission yet to share those because, as you can imagine, it's quite personal.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've definitely got photos of Prince Olav driving around.
Yeah, I've seen those. Seen those.
There's 2 photos that survive in the Royal Collection, which show him unwrapping the car on Christmas morning.
That would be lovely. I mean, if you can have that as well, you know, which I would have thought if you approached the right people, they would, knowing that you've got the car. I'm sure they would oblige.
I'm sure it'll happen in time. You know, I think it's fair to say it's had quite a bit of publicity since I've made the discovery of it. But there's more to come, you know.
Well, I know you've told me that it's going to go to Silverstone, to Cadillac being the new kids on the block when it comes to Formula One. And I understand you've been in discussions with them for it to go on display with them. Permanent display, is it?
It's going to be on permanent display at Silverstone at their new F1 Formula One headquarters, and they're in Formula E at the moment as well, racing. Because this was the first Cadillac that was ever made that was electric, they like that.
And you also told me there's an event, the Queen Alexandra or the Alexandra. What was that?
The Queen Alexandra Rose Day. It's a charitable event that has been going since 1910, I believe. Still going today, and this car was actually used in 1913.
Yeah, so that actually went to Queen Alexandra Rose Day in 1913 with Queen Alexandra, I take it.
It did.
Yeah, okay.
And so they're very keen to actually have it on display as well. So there's lots of people want to use it. And
yeah, I can imagine.
I don't think
the Royal Connection is huge.
Yeah.
Let's face it, especially from that era as well, the Edwardian era, and going through that time with the royal family. You know, is a great period of history when it comes to cars, when it comes to the royal family.
Yep.
And I suppose that, you know, the future for this little thing and for you is going to be pretty colourful.
So, like I say, I think we're missing a few parts. The bits that I've noticed, windscreen, we're missing one running board.
Well, all that material, that running board material, and this will all be easy enough to make.
Yeah,
Let's face
it's not difficult.
That's easy. The windscreen's a little bit harder, but there you go.
Yeah.
They can make those. They can make them in full-size versions for our type of cars. So I dare say they can do it in a miniature version. It should be cheaper.
Yes, probably. And some of the hood sticks are missing, but it's nothing difficult. And, you know, I don't see it as going to be a complex restoration at all.
No, I mean, look, let's face it, the actual condition of the car, albeit it's in pieces and it's a little tatty because it's obviously it's the age that it is and it's gone through the life that it has, it's in remarkably solid condition, solid condition. And it's just going to be just a wonder to see. And I'm really excited the fact that I've just had just a small piece and to be a small part of its history and its journey forwards. And I really look forward to seeing the end result once you've finished with it. It's going to be something really special, and I can't wait to see it on the scene.
Fantastic. Shall we take the body off then?
Yeah. If we pull these pieces off, I understand, Pete, that this car should have a chassis number in it, number 1.
Yep.
So let's see if we can locate that. And I take it the other 2 cars have got 2 and 3 in their chassis.
I don't think anyone's ever looked before because they've always been in a museum.
And complete
as well. Yeah. No one's ever done what we're doing now, and actually sort of inspected under the skin. But
what we have here is the starter motor as fitted to the Model 30 of 1912. And so this is what Cadillac were trying to demonstrate when they built this car, how good their starter motor was. So the reason why they built this car in the first place was to actually show that their starter motor was good enough to actually power a vehicle along. And so this is the actual starter motor from a 1912 Cadillac in fact, it's the original one that they put in this vehicle. And then it goes through to the back axle. The way that the speed is controlled here is you have a number of contacts connecting onto brass pickups or copper pickups. I'm kind of trying to see what they are. They're copper pickups. And so you've got 2 forward speeds. This would be 1 speed here with these 4 touching. And then as this rotated, when you pull the lever, it would then disengage this one, but then this one would engage along with these 3, which would give you the second speed. And then when you rotated it further, it would give you the single reverse speed, which would be these 3 and this one, which would then send the motor in the opposite direction. A lovely bit of engineering. So 2 forward speeds and 1 reverse. Originally, as Pete said, the vehicle would have done something like 15 miles an hour, but it was geared down to do 6 miles an hour.
That's right. Yep.
And how they did that, I don't know. That's something that they'll be looking at when they do the restoration, I should imagine. Now, somewhere on this chassis is a chassis number. So we'll look at that as we go round. Leaf springs. You've got a 3/4 elliptic spring. You've got a quarter here, and a quarter here. So basically, these would be supported at the front of the chassis here, on the front of this quarter. Come back here. But this isn't fixed to the chassis. It's only fixed at this central point. Now, this is the same on the full-size version of the car, which then meant that this would give you some spring, and this would give you some spring, and it would lift up and down, and allow for the softening in that way. The other way that they did these was just with quarter elliptics, which would then have a bracket coming off the actual back of the chassis, and it would do away with this transverse one. Band brakes, which went round the drums here, which is where that band is that I showed you earlier on, would fix it. It'd actually go round and grip onto the drum via a lever at the front. It's got its own steering box, a miniature version of a steering box that actually works. It's geared. You can see that twisting here, and you can see it coming out onto the pitman arm down there. So that all works. And then coming forward, you've got the front axle with the kingpins, the steering mechanism on the arms here, on the steering arms, down here. And then your track rod going across. Beautiful forging, even where the front springs connect to the front of the chassis on the dumb irons here. That's exactly as it is on the full-size version, just all scaled down. And then somewhere at the front here will be a chassis number. This chassis is made up of, it's wood sandwiched with steel, which I don't know that they did on the full-size version of the car. I think that was all steel. But a lot of cars of period did have wooden chassis, believe it or not. And this one's just been made with a sandwich of steel and wood. But somewhere at the front here, there's going to be a number. And we know it's on this car because the history says that it has a number. In fact, I think that's it there. I don't know if you can pick up on that, but it does actually say 001 there. You can just see it. Can you pick up on that? But it does say 001. And
Which
it's from this
I
side.
find incredible. You know, they went to that much trouble. Remember, they thought they were only going to make one, and they've actually stamped it.
But was this car registered for the road in period?
It ran on trade plates. There seems to be some evidence that it did actually carry a genuine registration number.
So then it would have needed a chassis number to do that.
Of course, yeah, for the
for the registration
for
with
the
the DVLA.
registration.
But that car is just an amazing little thing. And I think it looks really good in my museum here, you know. It's just,
You think it's not going to move again?
I don't
okay.
think, to be honest with you, I think Cadillac can go and do one, actually. I think
You're
it
just
should
gonna
stay
keep
with
it
me.
here.
Yeah, I'll do your deal. You can pay me to keep it here. So there you have it. That's the little story behind the baby Cadillac and its history with the royal family. And I look forward to seeing you on my next episode.